here. The video today is going to feature me reading to you, and I got a lot of requests for reading videos in the comments and wherever else, and I looked around my apartment for a little while because I was looking for something really boring, like really boring, that I could read to you so that it helps you fall asleep. Something so boring that your mind can't help but lose focus and just pass out entirely. And I definitely have some ideas for future videos based on what I found. But for today, I wanted to read something fun that is a little boring, especially if you're someone like me. But I'm going to be reading you some recipes from a cookbook today. Recipes from a cookbook. Now this is a very special cookbook because my friends gave it to me about, I guess it was about 7 or 8 years ago now, when I was visiting them in New Zealand. And they knew that I had zero cooking skills and never learned how to cook myself. And it happened to be my birthday when I was down there visiting them. So they got me the Edmonds cookery book. And apparently this is the cookbook that everyone gets in high school in New Zealand to learn how to cook. I got no such book in my Canadian high school, so alas, I cannot cook. I hate cooking, I hate baking, I hate cooking. I think I hate cooking more though. So we're going to look through this cookbook together and read some recipes that I think sound nice, and that maybe one of these days I should probably learn how to make them and put this lovely gift to good use. I really do love this, and I have used it twice before, but I need to learn a lot more. So this book's got this nice little ring wire binding like this, so it's really easy to flip through the pages. And I'm not going to be showing you the pages too much throughout the video, but you'll just hear a little bit of page turning and sounds like that. But it's mostly about my voice reading to you. So just getting to the table of contents, and I thought that we could pick one of the types of desserts first, because I am far more interested in desserts than other food. So just looking at the table of contents here, I'm wondering what we should pick. We could go with breads and buns, we could go with cakes, or slices and squares. I love like lemon or blueberry slices, like bars and things like that. Oh, so maybe they'll have something like that in there. Yeah, what the heck, let's start with that. Slices and squares is on page 64. Page 64. 64. Ooh, so not quite there yet, but there's some lovely pictures in here too. Here we go. Page 64. So I'm just going to look through some of the recipes here and pick one that we're going to read first. You know, let's start with a classic. I see it right here, and all of the recipes are super simple. They've just got a list of the ingredients at the top of the page, and then a brief paragraph about how to actually make them. So you can take notes if you want, but preferably you can just close your eyes, try to pass out, okay? I'm gonna make this as boring and monotonous as possible so that you can sleep, okay? So the first recipe that we're going to start with is the chocolate brownie. Chocolate brownie. So you take 175 grams of butter, 250 grams of cooking chocolate, 1.5 cups of Edmond's standard plain flour. I'm sure any other standard plain flour will do. 1 cup of sugar. 2 teaspoons of vanilla essence. 3 eggs beaten. So you have to beat the 3 eggs. Chocolate icing, which is actually found on a separate page, on page 82. 1 cup of walnuts, chopped, but those are optional. Now these are the directions for the recipe. In a medium-sized saucepan, melt butter and chocolate on a low heat. Remove saucepan from the heat and add flour, sugar, vanilla, and eggs. Stir until well combined. Pour mixture into a greased and lined 20 by 30 centimeter sponge roll tin. Bake at 180 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes. Leave in tin for 10 minutes before turning out onto a wire rack. When cold, ice with chocolate icing and sprinkle with chopped walnuts. Cut into squares. Makes 20. That makes 20 chocolate brownies. Seems simple enough, right? That was our first recipe. Ooh, let's do a very similar recipe, but slightly different because it's got one of the most lovely trigger words in it. This is the coconut chocolate brownies. Coconut chocolate brownies. Toasted coconut. So this recipe calls for 125 grams of butter, 1/4 cup of cocoa, 1 cup of sugar, 2 eggs, 1 teaspoon of vanilla essence, a 1/2 cup of coconut, a 1/2 cup of standard plain flour, and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder and icing sugar. I think those are 2 separate items. Looks like it's on the same line, but the instructions for this recipe are: melt butter in a medium saucepan, add cocoa, stir over a low heat for 1 to 2 minutes, remove from heat, stir in sugar, add eggs, 1 at a time, beating well after each addition, beat in vanilla and coconut, sift flour and baking powder, stir into mixture, pour into a greased and lined shallow 20 centimeter square cake tin. Bake at 180 degrees Celsius for 30 to 35 minutes. Leave in tin for 5 minutes before turning out onto a wire rack. Cut into bars when cold. Dust tops with icing sugar. Makes 16. Makes 16. Those sound delicious. Those sound totally delicious. Now, let's read the coconut dream recipe. I think this is a type of bar as well. Coconut, coconut, coconut dream. This recipe calls for 125 grams of butter, softened, a half cup of brown sugar, 1.5 cups of standard plain flour, and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. That's for the bars, I believe, whereas the topping calls for 2 eggs, 1 cup of brown sugar, 4 teaspoons of standard plain flour, a half teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of vanilla essence, 1.5 cups of coconut, and 1 cup of chopped nuts. This recipe says, cream, butter, and sugar until light and fluffy. Sift flour and baking powder together. Mix into creamed mixture. Press into a greased 20 by 30 centimeter sponge roll tin. Bake at 200 degrees Celsius for 8 minutes. Pour topping mixture over cooked base. Bake at 160 degrees Celsius for 40 to 45 minutes or until brown. Cut into squares. Makes 24. 24. Makes 24. Makes 24. And for the topping, it says, beat eggs, add sugar and beat until thick, mix flour and baking powder, and fold into egg mixture. Stir in the vanilla, coconut, and nuts. And that's it. That's how you make a coconut dream. Coconut dream. Coconut, coconut, coconut dream. The next recipe that I'm going to read is called Ginger Crunch. Ginger Crunch. Ginger Crunch. Okay. This one says 125 grams of butter softened, a half cup of sugar, 1.5 cups of standard plain flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of ground ginger. And for the icing, you need 75 grams of butter, 3/4 cup of icing sugar, 2 tablespoons of golden syrup. I learned what that was from this cookbook. We have it in Canada. I was shocked. 3 teaspoons of ground ginger. And the directions say, cream butter and sugar until light and fluffy. Sift flour, baking powder, and ginger together. Mix into creamed mixture. Turn dough out onto a lightly floured board. Knead well. Press dough into a greased 20 by 30 centimeter sponge roll tin. Bake at 190 degrees Celsius for 20 to 25 minutes or until light brown. Pour hot ginger icing over base while hot and cut into squares before it gets cold. Makes 24. 24. And to make the ginger icing, it says, in a small saucepan, combine butter, icing sugar, golden syrup, and ginger. Heat until butter is melted, stirring constantly. 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 Those also sound delicious. So what other slices and square recipes can we find here? So what about meringues? I've actually never known how to make meringues. And there are only 3 ingredients, so I see them everywhere in bakeries here, but I had no idea how they were made. So the way to make meringues is you need 2 egg whites, a half cup of caster sugar, I don't know what that is, and whipped cream. So it says beat egg whites until stiff but not dry. Add half the sugar and beat well. Repeat with the remaining sugar. Pipe or spoon small amounts of meringue onto a greased oven tray. Bake at 120 degrees Celsius for 1 to 1.5 hours, or until the meringues are dry but not brown. Cool, and when required to serve, sandwich meringues together in 2s with whipped cream. Makes 12. Makes 12 meringues with that. I had no idea how those were made. Let's take a look for another recipe here. So how about this one? This one is the Oaty date and apricot bars. So you need the filling recipe and the base. So for the filling, you need 1.5 cups of chopped dates, 3 tablespoons of water, and 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. For the base, you need 125 grams of butter, 3/4 cup of raw sugar, 1 egg, 1 tablespoon of golden syrup, 1 teaspoon of vanilla essence, 1 cup of chopped apricots, 1 cup of wholemeal flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 cup of rolled oats, 1 cup of coconut, and lemon icing, which the recipe can be found on page 82. So that part's not in here. I'm quite sure that I'm going to misread tablespoon and teaspoon many times throughout this, but that's okay. We're just doing this to make you sleepy. So for the filling, it says put dates, water, and lemon juice in a small saucepan. Cook over a low heat until dates are soft. Cool. The directions are so straightforward. I love it. For the base, it says cream, butter, and sugar together until light and fluffy. Add egg and golden syrup. Beat well. Add vanilla, apricots, wholemeal flour, baking powder, salt, oats, and coconut to creamed mixture. Mix well. Divide dough into 2 equal portions. Press out 1 portion thinly over the base of a greased 20 by 30 centimeter sponge roll tin. Spread cold filling over this. Dot small pieces of dough over filling and carefully spread it together to form a top layer. Bake at 180 degrees Celsius for 25 to 30 minutes or until golden brown. When cold, ice with lemon icing, cut into fingers. Makes 36. Makes 36. 36. Good. Those sound really, really, really good. Those sound really good. Now, let's read one more recipe from the bars. And this is one that I'm not familiar with. I'm not sure what a Louise cake is, but we're going to read this one. So it says you need 75 grams of butter, 2 eggs separated, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, a half cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of sugar, That's strange. 1¼ cup of plain baking flour, a 1/4 cup of raspberry jam, and half a coconut. Half of a coconut. Okay. So it says cream, butter, and first measure of sugar until light and fluffy. I see. So we're going to put the 1/2 cup of sugar in first and then the 2 tablespoons later. So first measure of sugar until light and fluffy. Beat in egg yolks. Sift flour and baking powder together. Stir into creamed mixture. Press dough into a greased 20 by 20 centimeter shallow cake tin. Spread raspberry jam over the base. In a bowl, beat egg whites until stiff but not dry. Mix in the second measure of sugar and coconut. Spread this meringue mixture over jam. Bake at 180 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes or until meringue is dry and lightly colored. Cut into squares while still warm. Makes 24. Makes 24. And that is called a Louise cake. I had never heard of that before. But I really, really hope that you have enjoyed listening to my voice, reading you these recipes. And I hope that we can do this again soon. Maybe we'll read the cake section next time, if you'd like. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and let me know if there's something else you'd like me to read. Preferably some really boring stuff to help you guys sleep. Let me know. And if you haven't already, I would really appreciate if you left a like on the video. And it would be extra cool if you could also subscribe. That would be really cool. And I would really appreciate it. Get some rest for now. Get some really good rest. And I will see you again next time. I will see you again really soon. I can't wait. Good night. Good night.